Hey there, welcome to Board Game Hot Takes, the podcast where we give our immediate reactions to the hottest board games just minutes after playing them. My name's Tim.
And this is Chris.
This is Adam.
And today, instead of giving our hot take review on a game we just finished playing, we're going to talk about a whole bunch of games that we played over a long weekend at one of our semi-annual BGHT conventions. This was in Sedona, Arizona. The four of us, myself, Adam, Chris, and Steve all got together and played, 16 or so games over a long weekend. And so we're going to jump into many of them today, and we'll save some for next week. We'll split this into 2 episodes. But before we get into talking about all those great games, and some not so great, we're going to talk about some poll results this week on social media. I asked a poll on Twitter and on our Facebook group. And I said, have you ever replaced a board game because the components, like the card, board, etc., were worn out? What about you guys? Have you ever replaced any?
I have not, but that's not to say that I wouldn't. I think Terraforming Mars, I've had the longest. Some of the edges of those cards are starting to get a little worn, the black is starting to turn to white undercard material or whatever that is underneath those, underneath the paint job there. So the wear and tear is starting to show. The love is starting to come through on some of my games, but not yet. I haven't replaced anything. And I don't know what I would do. Can you just buy can I write to Frick's Games and be like, hey, I need 1,000 new cards. Can I just pay you $50? Like, how does that work?
No, I think you got to buy the game all over again if you want to replace it.
Although if you're spending $50, you can get the whole game. That's the beauty of it.
Yeah, that's right.
I have never replaced a game because the components wore out, but not because of any philosophical reason. Just I've never actually worn out a game. So, and honestly, I don't know how worn out a game would have to be before I would say it needs to be replaced. I mean, would it have to have like holes in the cards from my thumbs, or would I have to like have the spear broken off of my favorite mini, or I don't know. So I have a hard time believing I would actually do it, but I guess it's possible, I suppose.
I haven't yet, but I've been close. Like, I would have replaced Castles of Burgundy, I think, at this point, because right now it's got like the trade routes cards have water spilled on them, so they're warped, and like there's some tiles that have been dropped in a glass of red wine, so it's miscolored, and the game is just so worn. It's been played so much. The tiles are all, rough on the edges, but it's such an ugly game anyway. I don't know that it really, there's any value replacing it. It's not like it's this nice, beautiful game, but I probably would have replaced it, except that, I've got the deluxe edition, the new version of it coming out. And so that's a perfect time to get rid of the old and bring something fresh and new in. The other games that I've thought about, though, were like Everdell. I've played about 120 times, and those cards are getting a little bit worn. And I was tempted to just buy up a new base game because the base game cards are starting to wear out more than the expansion cards, and they don't match anymore. But what I decided to do is just buy the nice Everdell sleeves and just sleeve everything. And I think I'm going to start to do that with games that I play a lot. And that's where I think this comes in the most, is like games with cards that you shuffle a lot, like deck builders. Deck builders are, so I think I might do this like Lost Ruins of Arnak. I might buy sleeves for it, and like do an Imperium. I've always been an anti-sleever, but I think with some of these games that I'm getting so much like love out of and playing so much, I think it's worth putting some sleeves on them. And the board holds up, the player boards hold up, the other components, they all hold up. You don't need, none of that stuff wears out. So I might start sleeving some of my favorite games.
Well, let me caution you about becoming a sleever, Tim, because it has its ups and it has its downs. So like doing Imperium is great. You get everything sleeved. You got matching sleeve sizes for all 1,000 cards or whatever. And then they come out with a 75 card expansion, and you're and you're out of sleeves, and you have mismatched sleeve sizes, and you have to undo them by like a new set of 2,000 sleeves and re-sleeve everything. So, I've had to do that with Rebellion like 18 times. So it can be tough, especially if you're only playing it like twice a year.
Yeah, that's true. That's right. I guess the key is to just like wait till the company officially announces they're never doing an expansion, like Terraforming Mars. Which they just announced another expansion for after saying that. All right. Well, here's what listeners said. So I asked a poll, as I mentioned, and the first option was response to the question: have you ever replaced a board game because of the components were worn out? Yes, one was 22.1%. Yes, several was 10.4%. No, I don't mind the wear was 33.3%. And no, I have too many games was 34.1%. So yeah, a lot of people, the plurality here just feel like they have too many games to play enough to actually wear them out. But we did get some responses as well, some comments here. So Josh Drake said, no, that would require playing them more than 5 times. Yep, good point, Josh. I guess if you just buy enough games, you don't have to worry about wearing out any particular game.
That's awesome.
By the way, Josh is a regular listener, and he's been helping me out because I signed up to I'm going to go to the BGHT in Dallas in, I think it's early November. He kind of gave me some tips on when to book the hotel and stuff like that. So thanks, Josh, for your help. I'm looking forward to getting out there. If anyone else is planning to go to BGHT in November, would love to hook up with you and play some games. And Josh, looking forward to seeing you there. Caleb said, I sleeve everything and I don't play with savages. So I guess Caleb has not had to replace any games.
Nicely said.
Joe said, there's something special about the wearing out of something because you enjoy it so much. I don't mind unless it really breaks the game or makes it impossible to play. Yeah, I feel that, but I also like things nice and feeling fresh and new. So I do think that if there's a game I played enough and I couldn't just sleeve it to make it look nice again, I think I would replace one of my favorite games, but still hasn't happened yet for me.
I do like the sentimental tone to that answer, though.
Jennifer said, my husband has one game in particular. He felt a need to buy a second copy because the cards were sticky. He blames me for eating a cake while playing. Ooh, Jennifer, you just set off a whole lot of listeners with that answer right there. Touching your husband's cards while you're eating cake. That's risky. And then Brian said, we got close to replacing the core set of Harry Potter Hogwarts Battle, but made a personal decision to stop playing it. Deck builders are the most likely candidates, I guess. Yeah, I totally agree with that, Brian, about deck builders. Like that, those are the cards that you're shuffling the base deck a lot, so they start to feel different than the other cards in the game, and they wear out quickly. Clank was a good example of that. But the first version of Clank I had was Clank in Space, and it got played a lot. And Chris has inherited that copy, but the base decks are very worn compared to the other cards in there. And so there's a couple deck builder type of games like Lost Ruins, Dune Imperium. Those are the ones that I would consider sleeving just because I think they are going to get shuffled a lot. Terraforming Mars, I might do at some point, but I don't know. I love that game, but it doesn't get played a whole lot, so probably not necessary. All right, well, let's jump into our feature topic today, which is the many, many games that we played in Sedona, Arizona at our BGHT Con, our semi-annual gathering of the BGHT crew. And this just happened last weekend, so we'll talk a little bit about event and what went on there, but mostly we're going to focus on talking about the games. So we're trying to do like a Thursday to Monday event, and I live in Phoenix, Arizona, so everyone was flying into Phoenix, and we were going to take the 2-hour drive up to Sedona. Steve got in kind of early Thursday morning, and I got a couple quick games with him in before we did this, but then we picked Adam and Chris up at the airport about 6 p.m. and hit the road. Got up to Sedona shortly before 8:30 or something like that. And by the time we got there and got settled in, it was about 9 o'clock before we started our first game of SedonaCon. And somehow we managed to get several games in that night. Anything that stood out to you guys getting into Sedona? Like, what do you think of that as a venue this year?
Well, Sedona was beautiful. We got it at night, so I couldn't really see the beauty until the next day. But aside from some time change glitches, which you would think as a person who flies quite frequently, I would have that on lockdown. I thought it went really smooth. It was nice meeting you guys at the airport, at the restaurant there. We grabbed some dinner before we headed up, so that was great. And we got to chit-chat in the car on the way up. And there was a couple of near-death experiences on the highway driving up, which got us all riled up. And then I think you saved our lives one time too, Tim, driving up too. So shame on you for almost killing us, but nice job saving our lives as well. So
I think every single one of those you count as me saving your lives because, there was no accident. It was all safe. Everyone made it safe. Nobody got hurt. You're welcome.
Nobody died in the making of the Sedona BGHT Con weekend. I love Sedona. I think it's great. I have never spent a significant amount of time there. In fact, that was my first weekend I'd ever spent, but I've passed through a couple times and I've spent a day there and done a little bit of like very, very light hiking. So I think it is probably one of the most beautiful towns, cities in America. So great venue. Your place is beautiful. It was absolutely lovely. My only regret is that we didn't get a chance to get out more and actually see some of the town, see some of a little bit more of the trails. Although we did actually get out a little bit, and that was nice. I would have liked to have seen more, but in service of games, we spent a lot of time inside, which makes you wonder what was going on out in that beautiful town when we were sitting there playing games.
Personal sacrifice for the podcast, and I don't regret a minute of it. By the way, when when Chris pulled up in the airport and we all met together, he showed us this awesome trophy he purchased this year. Chris has been our trophy maker for the last few years, and this year it has a nice multicolor Board Game Hot Takes logo on it in transparent glass, and champion BGHT Sedona, Arizona, with the dates on it listed on the bottom. So this was the prize to whoever won the most games for the weekend. We have like a kind of a special scoring mechanism that we use this year. So a lot at stake here, and we were ready to get started on Thursday night. Now, we picked who was going to pick the game first based on who did the worst at the last con, the Long Beach Con. And if you listen to our Long Beach coverage, you'll know that I did not win a single game at Long Beach Con, and a Long Con, I guess we called it. And so I got first pick here, which was great because it also started me out with the first win of the weekend. And we played Clank Catacombs. This was Clank is one of my favorite game series, and this is my favorite iteration of it. And I wanted to introduce it to you guys. What do you think of Clank Catacombs?
Well, I'm sorry, Tim. I think you're a great human being, but Clank and all its iterations doesn't really do too much for me. I don't think it's horrible, but I think it's fine. It's fun. It's fun. You're walking or crawling around, in this case, in these catacombs, and there's these dungeons, and it's doing wacky stuff, and you got to stop at these little crystal caves. So it's a romp around, and it's silly and it's fun. I find a way to always not quite make it out of there and get trapped and get lost and lose all my stuff, and I can never quite pull it off. So that's not what makes it not fun to me. Just that it's a meh game makes it not super fun to me. So
you did do a lot better this time, Adam, though. You actually got boots. You focused heavily on boots. You stole all the boots out of the card row. So you did a lot of moving around this time. That must have been more entertaining than the first time you played Clank.
It was. That part is for sure. What wasn't entertaining is these spinny caves. These caves kept spinning around and messing up my routes, and that happened quite frequently. So I don't know about that as a mechanism. A little, that mechanism, it made me a little dizzy.
Yeah, it sounds like Adam's about ready to give Clank Catacombs the boot.
Nice.
Yeah, I've got to agree with Adam on the spinny caves, spinny catacombs, whatever you want to call it, part of the game. And I love Clank. I'm a huge fan of Clank. I have, as Tim already mentioned, the Clank in Space that he gave to me. And one of my favorite gaming experiences of all time was playing the campaign in Acquisitions Incorporated. So I am all in on Clank. But I have to admit, I was disappointed in Clank Catacombs, which was extra disappointing to me because Tim had talked so highly of it, and I was so excited to play this game. But I felt like the flipping tiles and the rotating tiles made it feel so random that I did not feel any ability to develop a strategy. And in particular, let me talk about the spinny tiles for a minute because Adam mentioned it, but I think that's the thing that killed the experience to me. And I'm going to give it with the caveat that Tim, I think, told us that there's not really that many cards that do this, but we happen to draw a bunch of them. But you have these, you pull the tiles out, these hex tiles, and that tells you, where you can go. It's going to have pathways that move from one part of the dungeon to the next. And there were cards that we drew that made the tiles spin. And you can only go out on a route that goes from one location to another. You have to follow the paths out of the cave. So you may have made a plan to go in one direction, and then, oops, somebody drew a card. Now you're headed in the opposite direction, and you'll never actually make it to the place you were going. And it just felt like we hit 2 or 3 of those. And I'm like, I don't even know what the hell's going on now. I'm just like, I was going in 3 different directions. I just didn't love that aspect of the game. I preferred to play on a set board where I can plan out where I mean to go. I felt a little bit let down by that. So Tim, I that probably hurts your heart. So hearing us say these things. So what was your?
It's so sad to hear that you guys don't like fun. I just, this is a silly push your luck, like slight strategy game, and the thing you don't like about it is that there's too much luck in it. I don't know. I don't think you understand the spirit of Clank. If you don't understand the spirit of Clank, then this would not hit for you.
That's ridiculous.
Now, Chris, you did say one thing while we were playing that I had not realized before, and that I think probably ring true a little bit, and that is that Clank Catacombs, the theming on it, the artwork, the kind of the thematic tie-ins was very generic in a way that Clank in Space, which you had first been introduced to, I think did a much more fun job of introducing humor and kind of parody of its source material. And you mentioned that, and then the whole rest of the game, I was kind of looking at the cards that came up and looking at the board, and I was like, "You're right. This is very generic, much less fun." And so I wonder if that maybe impacted your enjoyment of it a little bit more, Chris, as well. But I think, as you mentioned, the spinny tiles, there's like 4 opportunities for that to happen in the whole game, and we just happened to hit all 4 of them, and all when you guys were so motivated to get to your destination that it turned it off for you a little bit.
I'm going to echo Chris's sentiment and say that, yeah, the Clank in Space was nice. It had all those references to Star Trek. I guess I could say the stars, both Wars and Trek, and Alien, I think, was in there. So many sci-fi references are in Clank in Space, and that just made the whole experience a lot more enjoyable for me with that game. You know, if the game is just going to be kind of silly, fun romp, then that's what I'd like to have it be, rather than spinny caves and spelunking references, which I don't know much about.
Yeah. So Tim was absolutely right on one thing and absolutely wrong on the other. Absolutely right. I'm sure that my enjoyment of the game was impacted by the not lack of humor. I mean, it's still a humorous game, but the sense of humor in that game, the deep cut references to all the science fiction tropes, they're priceless. I love the sense of humor. And this game just didn't have that nearly as much. Where Tim was absolutely wrong is the idea that these spinny tiles and flipping things and the randomness creates fun. I mean, we're gamers. We're not playing Tiddlywinks.
Tiddlywinks is an awesome game, so we should play that. I'm going to request that one for the next con.
So by the end of that very, very mixed game, we had our first standings of the evening. Tim came in first, Steve came in second, Adam came in third, and I came in a dead, depressing last.
Oh, that's why you didn't like the game. That makes more sense now.
That probably didn't help either.
No.
Just because it's fun, I recorded when we started and when we stopped each day, because it just gives folks a sense of our how long these sessions go. We just started at 9:00 and we had 3 games that night. So bam, that's how hardcore we are. So the second game we played was a favorite from Palm Springs when we had our first BGHT Con, and that was Smartphone Inc. Oh my goodness, what a delightful game.
Yeah, Smartphone Inc. was really fun to revisit because I have not played it since Palm Springs, and Adam actually sent me a copy of this for my birthday last year. I think he actually sent it to Jen for my birthday because he wanted her to play it. So I've had it in my house. I tried to teach it to them one night, and it just didn't happen. So I was excited to get back to it, have Adam kind of refresh me on the rules. So now I'm ready to teach it and play it again. Smartphone Inc. was a lot of fun to get back to. It was it's so easy to get back into. The game runs so smoothly. Quick little planning session, and then it kind of just like the rest of the round just works itself out. And one of the reasons why we got so many, like 3 games in starting at 9:00, was that Clank runs briskly, but Smartphone Inc. runs briskly as well. And I think we ran through this game, 4 of us, in like an hour and 15 minutes or something like that. And it was super fun, super competitive. I made some really bad decisions early, which I will never do again. And then felt like I had a great rest of the game, but couldn't quite catch up. So I was struggling to catch up on this one, but had a good time. We played with a new tech set. It felt like a little bit of a different version of the game than we played in the past because of some of the technologies that were out there. But it was fun. I like the economy out of this. I like the little bit of push your luck of when you reveal how expensive your phones are going to be and how you compare to other people. Had a really good time with this. Fun playing it on the table for sure.
It felt so fantastic going to a game like Smartphone after the spinny clunkiness of Catacombs. You have these smooth, clean cell phones that you just get to like pick some icons out and sell them to different countries. No, I'm being a little bit jokey, but not really, because this game is super clean, super fun. I love the price mechanism, ties into turn order for the rest of the round. The tech set was so fun. We had the dangler for, what was it, 4G or whatever it is. It lets you dangle the little extra, I don't know what they are, icons off of your 2 tablets, so you can get a little more actions involved in each of the phases. I love the phase structure of this, that auction sort of planning phase, and the reveal that nobody really cares about that much except for the price. And then you go through the round collecting these techs, doing these trucks, picking up these tiles from the factory. It's just so clean and so fun and so smooth. And then you have the carryover. We had the tech with the carryover. This time I carried over when I had from the 4th phase to the 5th phase, when I set my price cheap, I was like, maybe I'll carry over the rest of these and sell them expensive in the next round. And that got me, it squeaked out the victory for me in this one. So that was something I'd never seen before. And it was a fun way and a fun game. And I'm glad we got back to this one. And I'm glad it was smooth.
Yeah, smooth and clean are all great words for Smartphone Inc. I am astonished that this game is as fun as it is, because it's one of these games that you think, Smartphone Inc., how could this possibly be fun? An economic model based on selling what is already becoming a rapidly outdated set of technologies. I mean, this is like, how can this be good? But it is so good. And on top of all that, one of my favorite things about this game, beyond, I mean, all the streamlined gameplay and the quick, how quickly you can get through a game of this, it's the production. It is so simple yet so effective. And I mean, it steals my heart that it has a 2-layer playboard. The entire board is 2 layers, and that is just incredible. I actually like this game so much after 2 plays of it that when we got back, I ordered a copy of it, which should be here in a couple days. So
that's awesome.
I'm really excited about it, because I've got a game group that I play with here that likes mid-weight Euro games. And I think that a lot of the stuff that, we play would lend itself, would be equally attractive for someone to like Smartphone Inc. And I'm hoping to introduce this to them because I think it'll be a hit. And so I am thrilled. I'm thrilled to play Smartphone Inc.
So, Tim, you said you made some mistakes early on in the game. You remember what those were? You want to talk about those?
Yeah. So I bid high in the first round on my phone, the price of my phones, because I was like, I'm not competing for anybody, except I forgot to actually sell any phones. So in the first round, I bid like 6 on my phones, and everybody else just jumped ahead of me on the point schedule, because everyone else sold like 5 or 6 phones at $3 or $4, and I sold 2 phones at $6 and immediately fell behind. Where if I just sold like 1 more phone, I would have been really competitive with you guys.
Yeah.
And I just didn't plan that well. Instead, I focused on getting another tech tile, and then, or like getting some quick tech that let me get cheaper tech later, and also get another factory board tile or whatever. So I kind of focused on that in the first round, and that, which is fine, but I think I should have at least still tried to sell some phones that round, and I just didn't do a good job of it. Beyond that, I felt like I played a pretty good game, but I just could never quite catch up on the points. Where did we end up on that one, Chris? I can't even remember. I know I didn't win, but I don't think I did terribly. I probably still ended up last, though.
You came in third, and this one, Adam came in first. I came in second. You were third, and then Steve came in last.
Okay, nice. Yeah, I'm actually happy I got a third on that one, because I felt like I started out so weakly. But I had a good game. It was a lot of fun to come back to this one, and I'm excited to play it some more. I do hope to teach it with some local folks soon. I think this will go over well with a couple groups I've been playing with lately.
And there's an expansion to this one out, isn't there?
There is. It's a nice expansion too. It comes with another map that's a little tighter for 2 or 3 players.
Nice.
It has a couple new mechanisms in there. It has like a CEO little character that gives you that you can, and it's modular, you can play with it or not. And that gives you a little thing you can do if you don't have a headquarters in that town. Your CEO can go out there and do some stuff. It has some additional text, and I think there's a couple other things in there, but mostly I like it for that 2 to 3 player map, which can be pretty nice, especially at 2 players. It's fantastic. And then the couple other little tech sets in there are pretty cool too.
Yeah, cool.
Nice. So the last game we played for the night, so we were picking games, and that was Adam's pick because he had come in third at Long Con. But for the last game of the night, Chris didn't want to pick some big epic game, and he didn't want to ruin his pick. So I was like, well, let's just play a light little game. It won't take anybody's pick away. Picks, by the way, this is really exciting to us because we only have like 3 or 4 games that we're going to get to choose for the weekend. And so everybody's really excited to have their special say on what's the next game that gets played. So I was like, well, let's just play a light little game that we can finish before bedtime. And we pulled out Scout. And I had so much fun playing Scout. I can't wait to hear what Chris has to say about it because this was his first intro to it. But I thought it was great. I had a blast with it. I had so much fun that the next night I made us all play it again at like 2:00 in the morning. But yeah, had a really good time playing Scout. Adam and I both talked about this game recently. A fun little ladder climbing card game with a circus theme to it. But just some really fun decisions with it, some really fun little things that make you feel clever when you scout the right card and put it into your hand and then make a big hand, put on a big show. And I had a wonderful time playing Scout and can't wait to go back to it.
Tim, you use the circus theme labeled there loosely, but effective. It's fun to have fun with the circus theme. The theme is pointless in this game, but it's fun it's something there, and then we can add on to it and have some fun with it. So it is kind of nice that it gives you something to run with, and I like that. And yeah, I enjoy this game tons. I had a lot of fun playing Scout once again, just like I know Chris did.
Look, I won't lie to you. I mean, I have to say mediocre things, I suppose, to keep up my reputation as being the trick taker and hater. No, I'm just joking about that. I went into this one with an open mind, and I have to admit it was more fun than I thought it was going to be. Trick taking is not my style. This is not a game I'm going to be asking for, but I actually did have fun playing it, and it really did a nice job of filling in a gap there at a time when we didn't need a big game. We just needed a little bit of fun. And this is entertaining. It was a type of game that I had not played before, this particular type of, I don't know, ladder climbing game that you had mentioned. I thought that was neat. And here's the thing that I'm going to say that will probably really shock you. I thought with this minimal, almost non-existent bit of theming, they did a heck of a lot with that. I mean, it created a mood in this game that I thought was delightful. It was really pleasant. I mean, these cards are big and colorful, and each card has on it, it's kind of cut in half because, it can be one of two different cards depending on which way you hold it. And each one had a little teeny tiny little icon from some kind of a circus performer, whether it was a unicycle or a elephant or a top hat from the ringmaster or something like that, and a name. So this card may have nothing themed about it other than the fact that it'll say like Evan, the trapeze artist. But it actually did add something. It made it feel, the colors and that little tiny bit made me feel like I was doing something circus related. And then you have this little chit. It's a little card that lets you, what do we call it? What do you do with that? What's the name of that thing you
Scout
can do?
And Show.
Scout and Show.
Scout and Show. Even just saying that made me feel kind of like circusy. So it was this weird magic this game has that for a game that's not my style, with almost no theming, they actually created, I think, a pretty fun atmosphere. And for that, I appreciated this game much more than I thought that I would.
Wow, that's surprising to hear, Chris, because you seemed pretty grumpy when I suggested we played again at 1:00 on Friday night.
Well, and here's part of the problem. We were playing this game at about 1:00 in the morning because you mentioned earlier that we played like an hour and 15 minutes for a game of smartphone. Well, that's absolutely wrong because we started at 9. You know what time we wrapped up? Like 2.
Yeah,
we wrapped up at 2 in the morning.
That was after Clank and smartphoning. I think they were both like an hour and a half or something like that.
Yeah, but that's like 5 hours right there. we managed to, we'll pack a half-hour game into 5 hours. I mean, that's kind of just how we roll. And so I probably, if we were sitting around, a bar in the middle of the day, and had a deck of cards, I probably would enjoy it even more. But I'm not loving much of anything by 1:00 in the morning. So
that's why Chris still hates High Society. It had nothing to do with the game itself.
Only time will tell.
So, Chris, we scored that one still, but we scored it at half points because it was a light game late at night. How'd the score turn out? What's the placing at this point on the end of our first day?
That one, Tim won. Adam came in second, Steve came in third, and I came in fourth. One thing I do want to talk about for a second is the scoring of this one, because I think it's interesting. I'm actually curious if any listeners hear this and have thoughts on how these things ought to be scored. I'd love to hear it, just because I think it was really interesting how we changed up from our previous year's scoring.
I think Chris is bitter about it, too.
No, actually, exactly the opposite. The outcome would have been different in the way we had scored it before, in ways that Tim sort of already hinted at. But honestly, I think what we did here made a lot more sense. I think it was a better way to score. What we did in the past was we had each game that you win get you a point, and that's it. So really the only thing that matters is winning the game. And what we did this year was we scored the way that we score. We have a kind of a little league that we run between each of our cons. And what we do is that if we have a 4-player game, for example, the winner gets 2 points, second place gets a point, third place gets nothing, and fourth place gets a -1. And this time, Tim had suggested, why don't we try doing that for the con? Because what it does is it's going to create an incentive for someone to not come in last. So even if you may not win the game, but don't throw the rest of it. Keep playing, keep trying. You don't want to get that last place finish and lose a point. And honestly, I felt that was by far the better way to do it because it kept the tension on, it kept the motivation high. And I think it was a much better way to do it. How did you guys feel about the change in scoring technique there?
Yeah, I agree. I loved it. And not only because it did, I did a little bit better, but it was fun to watch the shifts because like the person in last wins and then the person first loses a game, you all of a sudden have like a 3-point shift and all of a sudden everybody's even again. So we had many shifts over the weekend where one person was like, oh, they're in a insurmountable lead. And then like 2 games later, they're down in second to last place. And it was fun to watch those shifts and always fighting for the second and third, even if you couldn't make the first. So I really liked playing it this way. This is how I would always prefer to do our future con scoring.
I agree. I was a little suspect going into it. I was like, what? -1? I don't know about that. But yeah, the parity, Tim, like you mentioned, the swings and stuff were so fun to see. Chris could be way out by 3 points at the end of day 2. And then right off the bat, beginning of day 3, there's another shift and everybody's within a half a point of each other. So it made it really fun and kept everybody in it. And it, there was as much as you wanted to win the game, just as much you didn't want to come in last. You didn't want that -1. So you're still trying for the whole entire game to pull that third place guy back if you're in fourth place there.
Yeah. So I thought it was brilliant. I would also want to do that going forward. And again, I'd love if any of the listeners want to, weigh in on Twitter or Facebook and give your thoughts on how, if you and your friends play games and if you score them like this, what do you do? Because I think it makes a huge difference. In the previous cons that we'd done, it was almost like a steady march. It's like you're just kind of constantly creeping forward, and then one person gets some momentum, and then eventually by the end of it, they're just, that's it. It's all over. Here, like Adam said, it swung so wildly in a way that it should. I mean, if I win a game, great, and then I lose 3 games in a row, I don't deserve to be the winner. I don't know. I thought it was great. I say we keep doing it.
Yeah, I'm on board with that. And I got to say, after this first night, right, we played these 3 games. It's like 2:00 in the morning, and I got into bed, and I was just so excited. I had so much fun that first night. What a great night of games. Clank, Catacombs, Smartphone Inc., and Scout. Like, what a fun group to kick off the weekend with. And a couple wins for me. I was so psyched up and excited to go into the next morning. So the next morning, Chris's first pick, and he picks Teotihuacan City of Gods, an absolute favorite Euro-style game of mine. I was excited. This was my first time playing my physical copy of it, and I think Chris's first time playing the physical production as well, and Adam's as well. And so we busted this big old game out. Took about half hour to get it all set up and get all the components all over the board. Adam, how did Teotihuacan hit for you this time?
Well, this is such an amazing part of the world geographically, the Yucatan Peninsula. And you guys are already laughing at me because I'm setting this up big time.
We see where this is going. Let's talk about the city. Let's not talk about the game.
I love this culture. I love this civilization, and I think it's underrepresented. I think it's beautiful. But this game was just a huge letdown. I was excited to play it in person because I had so many questions like, well, what's really going on here and what's going on with this? So now that I finally understood the game, at least, a little bit more, and then I got to go through the mechanisms and churn it around in my brain and see how I felt about it. It was just lackluster and boring, and the theme didn't carry through, and these dice that go here, and you have to go, each one has this little spreadsheet you have to intersect with. Oh, is it a 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, and then intersect it with this thing, and what does that mean? And okay, I guess I get a wood and a cocoa, and maybe I get a gold here. Oh, and then this dice turns from a 2 to a 3, and is it the lower number or the higher number? I don't know what's going on. Oh, so I can get 5 cocoa now because there's other dice here. This doesn't make any sense. So I didn't have any fun with the choices that the game offers me here. There were some tracks you got to climb. That was pretty boring. There was just the movement around was boring. Collecting different masks, not exciting. So again, I love this part of the world and the culture that this game is trying to represent, but the game itself, it fell flat for me.
I don't even know what to say. I do get what you're saying, Adam, because I think when we played it the first time, I was feeling a lot of that same stuff that you were. And I think when we played that first game, it was one of the ones where I said, I'm not quite sure yet how I feel about this, because I think I could have gone either way. And, clearly we both did. You broke in favor of not a great game, and I broke in favor of, I really like this game, because there is a ton of stuff going on. You're not wrong about that. There is a lot to keep track of. There's a lot of details. There are some things that seem to me like almost, why do we need the masks? And just one more thing to keep track of, just like a little tag on. But overall, I think this is a great game. I love playing it. I'm actually excited because I backed the Deluxe Master Set is coming out here sometime soon. And this, first of all, is a game that has a great base level production. So I don't think it's something that I would replace if I had the original game, the basic game. I don't think I'd replace it with the Deluxe Master Set. But because I don't have the basic game, it was a good investment to make. And it's got some, I think, big chunky wood tiles. And I think as of today, there was an update that they actually put in there a little base for the pyramids, so you can slot your tiles into an actual holder instead of just sitting on a board. So stuff like that is nice. I think this is a great game. I love it. I'm glad we had a chance to play it, and it was my first win of the weekend, which is probably another reason why I loved it so much. I came in first. Steve came in second on this one. Adam came in third, and Tim, despite being the only person in the group who actually owns this game, came in fourth.
It was so sad. And you're going to see this trend where all the games that I love, all the like medium heavyweight Euro games, I failed miserably at like all weekend long. I had a great momentum started, and then I just like lost my momentum. Yeah. So Adam, I can't believe that you watched this pyramid build up in front of you and these decorations being built up on them, and you watched this beautiful production with all these colorful icons, and you didn't love that experience. But I did. I actually really enjoyed it. It did go long at 4 players in a group that was like a little AP prone due to going for points. I mean, I think more than any con we've ever done, like everybody was just taking their time, thinking through every decision. And this game went long because I think we played a nice 3.5 hours on it. And that's long for a game like this. And I agree, I like the mechanisms, but it feels a little dry if you're just waiting for other people to take their turns and you're just thinking about, okay, what's the next dice I'm going to move? But I like that there's a decent amount of interaction. You are paying attention to when can I rush ahead to get to a spot before someone else puts it there, and it costs me too many cocoa that I can use it, or I want to get there before they steal that tile I'm looking for. I had a lot of fun with the decisions in this game. I'm excited to own this game. I'm glad I have it in person. There's a lot of variability with the way that the tiles are set up and the way that even the action spaces are set up. So had a fun play with it. I don't fault you for it, Adam. This is just not your style of game, but I'm glad we went back to it, and it was fun. I'm glad Chris picked it as well, because I would have otherwise, and so it got one of those picks out of the way, cleared the space for my next pick. So after Teotihuacan, we jumped into Steve's first pick of the weekend. He was the winner of Long Con, so this was his first pick as the last picker this time, and he picked Tyrants of the Underdark, a game that we reviewed, a couple months back, and Steve loved it. The rest of us were kind of like mediocre on it at the time, but he loved it so much that he went out and bought it. So he flew it with him to Sedona to play with us, and this was his first pick. We busted out. We busted out some of the advanced factions this time instead of the 2 basic ones, which is what we played when we reviewed it. How did Tyrants of the Underdark hit for you guys?
Well, yeah, when we played it on that initial play, I enjoyed it because it seemed like a pretty smooth, streamlined deck builder with some area control, which sounds pretty neat to me. And here, maybe it was because we added these advanced factions, Tim, that you were talking about. And what those did was add a lot more complexity to the game. It let you promote these cards, which would give you points for every card that you kind of culled from your deck. And there was a few other mechanisms there that, take this guy here, put him over there, do this thing, do this other thing. So there was a little more thinkiness to it, or at least the options for a little more thinkiness to it. And you mentioned that, Tim. That's one thing I want to talk about maybe during the wrap up, that we did have this scoring and these like pretty neat prizes for the victor. So we were all, I know I was, trying to put together my best game for all of these games and really trying to think it through and figure out how I could make a good showing, at least avoid that 4th place spot in a lot of these games, which I didn't do here. I was a solid owner of 4th place in this game, but this game fell for me. I went from enjoying it, mediocrely in that first play to this one kind of fell flat for me again, just because it is supposed to be, at least I was hoping it would be this light breezy kind of deck builder area control. And I felt like this game went so long. I know I was thinking through a lot of my turns, and I think everyone else was taking quite a bit of time too to sort of optimize their play here. And that's not what I wanted out of this game. So I took forever trying to do what I thought was best, and I came in last by a long shot. And everyone else took forever too, but everyone else did a little bit better than me. So those are some of the reasons why Tyrants of the Underdark didn't quite do it for me on this second play.
I enjoyed it, but I didn't love it, which I think is kind of how I felt the first time that we played this on our review episode. The area control is fine. It's enjoyable. I don't dislike it, but it adds another dimension to the game, but it doesn't add a lot of excitement. I mean, really the heart of this game is still the deck building piece. And I think one of the things that was a weakness that worked to my favor in this game, this is a game that I ended up winning, was that there was a couple times early in the game where I just happened to draw the right combination of cards when the right card was out in the market row. And I was able to get some super powerful cards early on in the game. And from there, I just kind of dominated because I was able to parlay these two really powerful cards to keep doing powerful things over and over and over again. And it kind of made my deck unstoppable. Now, when you're playing a game of Star Realms or Hero Realms or, any of these Realms games, and that happens, because it does happen in deck building games, it's just sort of the nature of them. It's a 15-minute game, so who cares? It's like, you're going to get romped on and then you move on, you play another game. This was like a 2-hour game that we played. And looking at it, or trying to look at it from the perspective of what you guys were doing, I don't know that I would have had a lot of fun, kind of suffering through, somebody else getting a bunch of really great draws because they got a couple, lucky hands at the beginning of the games. So I think that was a bit of a weakness. Now, again, I did overall enjoy the game. I like deck building. I think it adds an interesting element with the area control. But this is never a game that I'm going to fall in love with. But it's one that I'd be happy to play again if Steve brought it and wanted to bust it out.
Yeah, I feel similar. The game was fun. I probably enjoyed it a little bit more on my second play, except that it took too long to get back to my turn. And what Adam mentioned is that we played with two of the more advanced decks, which both had a lot of extra decisions on even the most basic cards. The simplest cards in there had several decisions to make. And so it was like, okay, play a spy and then take back a spy and then turn that into, two troops and then move the troops. And so it was like, Adam would play a turn and it'd be like 16 decisions to make on that turn. Yeah. And I almost think like the almost perfect way to play this, and this is me speaking after two plays with no real authority behind it, but they play with one of the basic decks and one of the advanced decks. So you see a nice heavy mix of some of the simple cards to keep things moving quickly, but then a couple fun cards to give you some extra choices in it. And so this turn, what the first play felt like too simple and not enough interesting choices to too many choices and kind of bogged the game down a little bit. So that was my biggest complaint about it. It was fun playing it in person. I liked a little bit of area control and some of the different mechanisms that happen with these advanced decks. The production on this game is pretty sad. The board I did like better in person that I couldn't see when we played it on digitally. There's a little bit of artwork on there, made it a little bit more interesting. But these stupid little tiny cardboard shits that represent your troops are one of the most boring components I've ever seen in a production of a game. Otherwise, the production was okay. The card art was decent and stuff like that. But, a reasonably fun game. But like Chris said, too, that you play Star Realms and somebody has a lucky, run of the way their cards come up and stuff. And it takes 10 minutes and you're past it. When you have that happen in a 2-hour game, it's a little less fun.
Now, I just want to keep adding on here that the Underdark is a beautiful place to visit. If you haven't been there, I highly recommend it. It's fantastic. You'll have a good time. But Tim, you mentioned these little chits. For my, fattening fingers as I get older to grab these little circular chits and try to put those out on the map, it was kind of frustrating. And then there was something else you mentioned, Tim. I want to mention the area control here too. It's not my favorite type of area control. It's almost this tug of war. Yeah. Like, haha, I'm going to take 2 guys away from Tim. And now next turn, he's going to take 3 guys away from me. And it's just, it goes nowhere. There's so many other ways to do area control. Rising Sun, we're going to talk about that in a little bit. So the area control is just that push and pull, which is not my super favorite. It's really not a fun way for me to do area control these days anymore. So those were 2 more little nitpicks that I had, despite the Underdark just being a lovely vacation spot.
Well, in the end, despite my lukewarm comments on this game, I did win. So there's that. Steve came in second. It was his pick, so I guess he deserved to get a second place finish on it. Tim was third, and Adam came in last on Tyrants of the Underdark. So that got us to the next game of the afternoon. At this point, I don't remember what time it was, but it was pretty.
Like
it feels
early evening, or late
early
afternoon,
evening,
somewhere in there.
Which, I mean, when you think about it, we got started at 10 a.m. on day 2. And we were 2 games in early evening. Holy cow, people! I don't know.
Start to the second day.
Shame on us.
We take our time. We finish no game before it's time. It's like, a fine wine. But our third game of the day was the ever popular Yokohama, which you guys had done a review episode on a month or so ago with a guest host. And which is a wonderful episode, by the way. I had a lot of fun listening to you guys talking with Dean from Meepletown. And I was excited to play this one because despite the fact that it seemed a little bit dry, you guys had a lot of nice things to say about it. And so we jumped into Yokohama.
Yeah, so Yokohama was my pick. And although we played 2 games that went a little bit long, maybe, took their time, I still picked an extra heavy dry Euro game to play as a third game. Maybe not my best choice, but I really wanted to get this played this weekend. After reviewing it, a listener Luke Holt sent me a copy of this. And I was really excited to get to play it in person. And I'm so glad I did. It was so fun to set it up. This game has even more variability than I realized. Like each of these like action tiles you set out in the game in a like unique location has these different scoring tiles that are placed on them and different bonuses for hitting the number 5 action space on it. So setting up the production was great. And this game, if you look at it, we posted a picture on Twitter. It looks so cluttered on the board. There's just so much stuff going on, and I loved it. I loved looking at this game. I loved interacting with it. I was so excited to play with this game in person, and I'm so glad we did. And believe it or not, we taught Chris. This was his first play of it, and I thought the teach went pretty easy. Like I felt like it was a pretty smooth teach once you know the game. There's not that much that you have to really explain. I don't know. Chris has been tracking the time, but it didn't feel like this one went too long to me. Like we might probably knock this one out in like 2.5 hours with the teach, if I remember right. I could be completely wrong about that, but it felt like it went briskly for me. It felt like it was fun. Now, I took last place on this one again, just like Teotihuacan, and I remember this vividly because I had such a great start. I thought for sure I was going to race ahead to the finish on this. I've been playing it on BGA with people. I thought I had a huge advantage here, and I just like petered out about 2/3 of the way through the game and didn't do anything interesting for the last third of the game. Still had a blast with it. My favorite part of the game, okay, and I'm gonna I can't wait. I'm gonna let you guys talk about this, but I gotta say my thing first. My favorite part of the game is that Chris had picked up a couple technologies. One that made that his president couldn't be blocked, so his president could go anywhere, and the other is that he could like place cubes through the other presidents without paying for it. And all the entire game, Chris would do something, and Steve's like, "No, you can't do that." And Chris would just say, "Yes, I can." And he wouldn't tell Steve that I've got a tech that does it. He would just be like, "Oh, yes, I can." And then Steve would argue. he would get so riled up and argue that Chris couldn't do this thing. And then finally, I'd be like, "Steve, he's got a technology for it." And this happened like
4 or 5 times,
like 15 times.
15 times.
Steve, it's magic. Yep. That happened.
That did happen. So, Tim, I was right up there with you. We had that fast start. We were up at like, I don't know, 50 points or something before anybody else had like 20. I think, so we were battling back and forth. We got these guys. And I petered out right there with you with a little less petering than you, I suppose. But yeah, on this play, I don't know. Again, I thought this game was okay. I'm sure if I played it more, if I only had one game in my collection and this was it, I'm sure I'd love it. But
so anyone else like Adam didn't really have much fun this weekend to you? I don't know. Like, did you?
I don't know. I was still bitter from the.
You haven't actually enjoyed a game so far.
I was still smartphone. So yeah, I was a little bit frustrated after a 7.5 to 8 hour session of Teotihuacan and Tyrants of the Underdark. Again, Yokohama is a beautiful city, and I would love to hang out there and go to the fish market and see the churches and go to customs. But I was a little tired at that point, yeah.
And after Tyrants of the Underdark and Teotihuacan, or however one says that. I was just tired of pronouncing T's. So I was ready for something a little bit different. And Yokohama doesn't have a single T in it. So that's a win right there, kind of in my book. I was actually excited to see this game because you guys had said such nice things about it in the review, like I mentioned. But, it's also one that I was a little bit leery of, too, because it does have a pretty jumbled, cluttered table presence, and it has the feel of one of those games where you're just going to have a million different places you can go and do a million different things. And sometimes it doesn't work. And then sometimes, for me, it does work, like with Uwe Rosenberg, Feast for Odin. So it can work, doesn't always work. I actually was surprised at how well I thought Yokohama did work. It was relatively easy to teach. It was, I thought, entertaining. It wasn't my favorite iteration of this type of game, but it was pleasant. I enjoyed it. It probably helped a lot. Tim, you had mentioned that combo of the 2 or 3 technologies I had that let me just kind of do whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted. I mean, that's always great in a game when you can do that. So, that was hard to hate that. But I can imagine that if I was playing the normal mortal game that you guys were playing, where you can't just beam yourself across the planet at a moment's notice, then it may have felt a lot more restrictive. I do want to mention, too, the theming of this game, because it's one of the ones where it sounds like it's going to be so dry and so boring. Oh, another game based on a city. Just what we need, right? But I like the fact that they took a little bit of a different tactic with Yokohama than they do with a lot of these types of games. It's not about medieval Japan, or I don't know what the term is, feudal Japan. It wasn't Rising Sun era. It was like, the early 20th century, where there's streetcars and there's, and it kind of had this neat, colorful palette to it that made it fun to look at. And so I actually found this to be a game where the production elevated the game beyond what I think it would have been without that production, because it was colorful and fun. And I enjoyed looking at all the different pieces. I enjoyed looking at the production and seeing it out on the table. And if it hadn't had that little jolt of joy from the pleasant artwork on it, I think this game would have suffered from that. As it sat, I enjoyed it. I had a fun time playing it. And actually, I did pretty well on it, too, for being the first time I'd ever played this game. Steve was the winner. I came in second. Adam was third. And Tim came in fourth on this one.
So, Chris, would you play this with me on Board Game Arena again? Did you enjoy it enough to give it another shot?
Oh, I would. Yeah, I would play this one again. I enjoyed it enough that I would say yes to an invitation to that one. I'm not sure it's one I'd ask for necessarily if we were sitting around playing, but it's certainly one that I'd like to try again on BGA and give it another try.
Cool. Well, I loved it. I'm glad I own it now. I hope to get more plays of it in the future, and BGA is a great place to do that. All right, so the last official game of the night, the last scored game of the night, was Adam's pick, and Adam picked a game he's been talking about for a while. He's mentioned on several top 5 lists, top 10 lists. And this is Sentient. This is a Renegade published design. It was new to the rest of us. So, Adam, kick us off here. How did Sentient go?
Yeah, I'm interested to hear your guys' thoughts on this one. This is a game I've been playing mostly at 2 players as far as I can remember, maybe once at 3 with my dad and Cornell involved way back in the day. But this is a game, it's welcome to, Algebra 101. You've got these pretty neat looking custom dice. You give them a roll. You're only going to roll them 3 times during the game, and then you're bidding on these cards that are going to increase or decrease your dice as you, I don't know what the theme is here, as you plug them into your network or something like that. They're going to, add 1 or subtract 1 from the dice that are already rolled. There's a little bit of set collection here. Chris has already given me a sidelong view here. I'm scared of what he's going to say, but I enjoyed playing this one tons. I like the auction mechanism here. I like the little bit of set collection here. It works for me. It's a brisk, clean game as opposed to everything else we've been playing earlier in that day. Something that can be accomplished relatively quicker than what we've been going on with all these 3-hour games the rest of the day. So it was a breath of fresh air and a quick, light production. So I had a lot of fun playing Sentient. What'd you guys think?
I've never had so little fun playing a board game before.
Oh my God.
I don't like to be a hater, and this obviously you enjoy it. I mean, this is a game that obviously has a constituency. I am not that constituency. This game was negative fun for me. I mean, I have a better time helping my son with his math homework, and that's kind of what it felt like to me. It was basically, like you said, it was basic algebra, which is, I think, farther than where I got in college. So that might explain that. All joking aside, I really dislike math. A lot of people say that jokingly. I truly dislike having to do math. I get a calculator out to do the tip at a restaurant because I hate thinking about math. This game is nothing but math and trying to do math and trying to figure out, if I put this thing there, it's going to make this dice bigger, and then is this dice bigger than the one next to it, and is that equation going to get filled in? With the possible exception of Capital Lux 2 Electric Boogaloo, I don't think I've ever had a more negative first play experience of a game. And it is not lost on me that these were both Adam games that are very heavy on math. So clearly Adam is the math lover in this little crew, and I am not. So Adam, please set me right here. What am I missing?
Yeah, I will say you're right. So, okay, Teotihuacan, the same thing. You're going to move a dice and then it's going to increase by 1. That's exactly what you're doing in this game, except sometimes you decrease by 1, Chris. How is that any different than Teotihuacan? That doesn't make any sense to me. And then the math. Okay, people, listen, the math that you have to do here is the left dice greater than the right dice? That's the kind of math that Chris is having so much problem with in this game. So if that's too much for you, Chris, I don't know. I'm going to have to hold your hand through the rest of your life. So I don't know how you've been.
Maybe, when you went to your fancy math college.
Are you just a caveman lawyer, Chris? Is that what's going on here?
Oh boy. Okay. Tim,
let's
let me kind of fall in the middle. Let me fall in the middle here.
Please. Clearly we need a middle here.
Chris is being too harsh on this game, and Adam loves this game more than it deserves. So there's a couple things about Sentient. One is that it does have beautiful sci-fi artwork. Unfortunately, it's repetitive. There's 5 different pieces of artwork that's reused in this game. And if it had more, it probably would have been a bigger success for me, because as we draw and bid on cards here, I just wasn't seeing anything new and exciting. And so it just got stale from a production perspective pretty quickly. But beyond that, the game is a clever enough game. I mean, the idea that each of these cards kind of trigger the dice adjacent to it in different ways, and you're trying to go for different bonuses. And there's a little bit of a majority, right? If you have the most in this particular color, then you're going to get some bonuses with it. All of that worked really well. And it reminded me a lot, since you mentioned it, of Capital Lux 2. And that is that it's an abstract game that makes you think harder than I want in a light abstract game. So I didn't hate it. I enjoyed it. I thought it was an interesting puzzle to play through, but it was less fun than I would have liked with all the colors and the vibrant sci-fi artwork that was going on here and things like that. I was hoping to enjoy it more than I did, but I didn't hate it. The bidding was entertaining. There was an interesting little puzzle there between whether you're bidding your meeples or you're bidding your little asterisk components there and the value of them. Had a fun time with this game. I would probably never ask to play it again, but I would not kick Adam out of the house if he brought it to the table like Chris might do.
I can't argue that I wanted to like it more than I did. Okay. It's kind of how I felt about my last dentist appointment as well.
Chris, how did the scoring go on this after that exciting event?
Adam, because he was sentiently connected spiritually with this game, came in first. Steve was second. Tim, you were third, and I came in a sad, sorry, depressing. I'm not sure I scored a point in this game. I may have actually been at negative points by the end, if that's possible. But I came in a dead last. And by this point, it was 1 a.m. And I can't remember, did we play Scout again that night, or was it the following night?
Yeah, we did. We played another game of Scout this night as well, although we didn't score that one. Yeah. So the winner doesn't matter. Nobody remembers, but it was fun to wind down with something light that everybody knew. Let's wrap up there for today. That's more than enough anybody wants to listen to. We'll cover the next, 10 games or so that we played over the weekend in our next episode, which will release 1 week from today. Until next week, take care, everybody.
Good night, all.
Bye-bye.